Welcome to the final round of presentations for the Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility. This year is a special year. We celebrate our 10th anniversary of this event. And this is our very first ever virtual case competition. Over the past 2 weeks, 20 teams from around the globe have dived deeply into a business case focused on social responsibility in the cruise line industry. They have researched the issues at hand, developed recommendations, and recorded their presentations for our judges to view and score. Yesterday, teams met judges to answer questions about the recommendations and to receive feedback on their presentations and findings. Today, the winning teams from each preliminary round will present the recommendations live to a full panel of judges. This year, I am really proud that our teams come from every inhabited continent in the world, including the following countries: India, Netherlands, Ghana, Brazil, Australia, Canada, Thailand, South Korea, Italy, Switzerland, and the United States.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the 10th Annual Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility, and the first virtual Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility. It is my pleasure to welcome you all today to view our top 4 finalists who have worked very hard over the last few weeks to prepare for this opportunity to present their thoughts on an issue related to corporate social responsibility. Before we move into our presentations, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Shirok Sodagaran, who will share with us the history of the Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility before turning it back to me to share the details of our afternoon together. Shirok?
Thanks, Rachel. Good afternoon, good morning, good night, good evening. We're all over the place. So maybe we'll go with the Aussie good day. Yeah, it's really a pleasure to have the students from 20 universities participating at the 10th Annual Milgard Invitational Case Competition. They come from 12 time zones and all 6 inhabited continents. And yeah, we started this, about 12, 13 years ago was when we started the case competition. We started with our internal one. And then after 2 or 3 years of that, we went regional, i.e. Washington, Oregon, British Columbia. And then a couple of 3 years later, we took it national. And then 3 years ago, we went global. And this year, as you're aware, we have 11 non-US teams and 9 US teams. The idea was to give the students an experience where they could, take some dedicated time. In the in-person model, it used to be 3 days or 72 hours precisely, to work on a real live case on social responsibility. And over the years, we've used, we've written original cases. Some companies have been in our immediate footprint in the Pacific Northwest, such as Microsoft, Zillow, and so on. Others have been further afield. In the last 2-3 years, we thought it was appropriate, given that we're going global, to actually have cases from anywhere and everywhere. And so that's how our cases are put together. I'm kind of, over the 10 years for the Invitational, we've had approximately 50 universities participate, both US and non-US. And internationally, I think we've had teams from about, as I said earlier, this year we have 11 teams from abroad. Over the 3 years, I think we've had teams from about 16 different countries. I think equally important is the fact that these teams are from universities that are consistently, if not the top university in their respective country, and many of them are, the top two or three, among the top two or three universities in their country. So this year we allowed a little more time because of the unique circumstances, and we hope this is kind of a one-time situation. And so it's been remarkable how the team has stepped forward to handle all of the logistics and all of the technical issues. I am able to do many things, but that is not my forte. I barely am able to manage, Zoom for meetings and for my classes and so on. But I think it's a testament to the entire team at the University of Washington, Tacoma, that things have gone through very well until this point, and the next 2 hours won't be any different. So I want to quickly extend my thanks to all of the students who are participating. And some universities, because of the Milgard event, some universities have now started doing their own internal event to select their representatives to the Milgard event. So that's pretty neat. So some of these students have been working at this for several months now, not just for the last week when they got the case. I want to thank the faculty advisors. I want to thank, as I said, our tech team, our volunteers, our timekeepers, obviously my colleagues, Rachel and Anne-Marie. And finally, I want to thank all our judges. These are all very busy executives, and for them to give us time. And this year it's been over 2 days. In the past, they could block 1 day and be done with it, but this year it's been over 2 days. So very grateful to them. So thank you all. And back to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Sharok. I just want to recognize the work that has gone in to identifying our teams, communicating with advisors, helping us set up the schedule, and give a large thank you to Sharok for that work. Over the last 2 weeks, since actually February 13th, our students received a case, and they had 1 week to research, develop a presentation, record a video presentation, and prepare for the preliminary rounds yesterday. Yesterday, our judges met with each of the 20 teams representing 11 countries and 6 continents. They met with these teams and had the opportunity to both ask questions of the teams and to provide feedback for the teams. Based on those conversations, the judges determined who the winner in each preliminary round would be, and those are the presentations that you will see today. In between each presentation, there will be a brief holding screen in order to allow us to bring students into the live stream and prepare them to start their presentation. We ask you to be patient with us while you see the holding screen and to know that we will be back momentarily. That will happen in just a moment as we prepare for our first presentation and prepare to introduce our timekeeper. So with that, we ask you all to take a look at the holding screen and wait patiently for our first presentation, which will begin promptly at 1 p.m. Thank you very much and have a lovely afternoon enjoying these remarkable student presentations. Welcome back to the Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility. It is my pleasure to introduce our first team today, Team D4, which was the winning team in a group of 5 competitors yesterday in our preliminary rounds. Before Team D4 gets started, I'd like to introduce our timekeeper and have Michael review the rules for timekeeping that we will be following during this competition. Michael.
Thank you, Rachel. Welcome to the final round. You will have 15 minutes for your presentation and 10 minutes to answer questions from the judges. I, Michael, am your timekeeper. I will announce in the chat when there are 5, 2, and 1 minute remaining. If your team is not finished with their presentation when the timer runs out, I will speak up and you must stop the presentation. If the team finishes before the 15 minutes are over, we will proceed directly to the 10-minute question and answer period. No extra time will be allotted for Q&A. Team D4, go ahead and start your presentation.
Hello, my name is Sang-Yun Kim, and I'm the captain of the Team D4. I'm really honored to be here with you guys, and it was such an interesting case to prepare. Rest of the teammates, would you like to introduce yourself?
It's so honored to be here. I am Sung Baek.
My name is Han-Song Kim, and we are all excited to share our presentation.
Hello, I'm Mingyang Kim, and I hope you enjoy our presentation.
Shall we begin?
Okay. Hello, we are Denali Fund Investment Executives. Thank you for having us, and today we are so excited to take a voyage with a reasonable risk. This is the order of our presentation, and let me begin with the introduction of our investment target. Carnival Corporation is the biggest cruise company that has become the symbol of leisure and enjoyment. It accounts for nearly 40% of the market share, maintaining the top position in the cruise industry. However, from MSCI, the prominent ESG evaluation institute, it got CCC, which is the lowest grade. It means that Carnival is operating poor compared to its industry peers in non-financial areas, including environmental, social, and governance issues. As ESG is closely related to CSR, it is noticeable that Carnival might be irresponsible to society. However, being responsible to society has become necessary as it can threaten the sustainability of the company, which can be proved by these pictures. Stock price dropped more than 15% in those periods because of ethical issues and responsibility problem. Costa Concordia accident, repetitive illegal dumping issues, and recently, its poor response to COVID-19 raised the controversy that Carnival didn't care the safety of the society and environment. These cases let us know that a company must care not only their financial achievements, but also social responsibility in order to grow. Doing well by doing good. This is the current and future trend of the business. So in order to figure out the feasibility of our investment plan and Carnival's responsibility problem, we did compare the components of CSR with its industry peers.
We will evaluate Carnival's CSR based on Carroll's CSR pyramid. Economic and legal responsibility are essential elements of the company, while ethical and philanthropic responsibility are what are expected or desired from the society. In economic responsibility, we will evaluate whether Carnival Corporation is conducting economic activities well as an independent entity. In legal responsibility, we will see whether it is complying with laws and regulations. In ethical responsibility, we will evaluate the environmental, safety and quality, and labor management aspects of the company. And finally, in philanthropic responsibility, we will look at the contents of various social contributing activities. Economic responsibility is measured in 5 criteria: revenue, net income, EPS, price-to-earnings ratio, and market capitalization. Assuming normal operation, Carnival shows an overwhelmingly high performance. But recently, market capitalization of all 3 companies has plummeted due to COVID-19. Next is legal. Carnival has been irresponsible for fulfilling legal duties. For the past 5 years, it committed intentional pollution of dumping contaminated waste into the ocean. In 2016, Carnival had to pay the largest criminal penalty ever imposed for intentional vessel pollution, but it couldn't stop the company from additional dumping. Under the repeated misconduct of the company lies dishonesty spread across its operation, which was expressed in forms of falsifying records, forcing employees to lie, and using a magic pipe to hide dumping and circumvent monitoring. Such means for intentional legal irresponsibility must be addressed sincerely.
For the third component, ethical responsibility, we looked over 3 aspects: environment, safety and quality, and labor management. The first aspect, environment, was evaluated by following criteria: installation rate of emission gas control system and cold ironing system, which address air pollution, advanced water treatment system for marine pollution, and single-use plastic item reduction per vessel. Carnival was evaluated at B- in environment sector. Carnival outperformed competitors on installation rate of cold ironing system, but installation of water treatment system and effort to reduce single-use plastic item was poor. Second sector mainly evaluate Carnival cruise packages safety and quality based on criteria such as crime, accident, and sexual assault occurrence rate, and especially COVID-19 response. We evaluated Carnival as B-. The absolute number of crimes and accident and sexual assault of Carnival was high, but considering their large market share, they were the lowest in occurrence rate. For COVID-19, absolute scaling was used. Princess Line had generated more than 1,500 positive cases. What's even serious is Carnival's irresponsible attitude, such as carrying out the scheduled events even though crews were aware of the danger of the coronavirus. Although Carnival now realigned their manual for COVID-19, companies' dishonest and irresponsible behavior is considered problematic. Next is labor management, the last area of ethical responsibility. Labor management is evaluated based on 4 criteria: employee safety and education, wages, employee satisfaction and welfare, diversity and gender equality. Carnival Cruises' labor management is rated as good at a B+ level when compared to its peers in the industry. Especially in employee safety and training and employee satisfaction, Carnival Cruise outperformed competitors. The policies related to wage level and diversity are not at the top level in the industry, but they are maintained at a complaint level. Due to the nature of working environment of the cruise industry where room and board is provided, they are evaluated to be fair enough compared to other industries as well. Final component is philanthropic responsibility. This part will focus on current activities, not evaluation through comparison. Carnival Cruise Lines conducted various philanthropic activities in sectors such as disaster relief, community support, and education and children support. Various activities are mainly carried out through collaboration with various organizations, and as a prominent activity, Carnival donated $2 million in support of Hurricane Dorian in 2019. For more details of all evaluations on CSR, please refer to the appendix. So far, we have analyzed the CSR of Carnival Cruise. Carnival has some advanced aspects than others, but there were some points that needed to be improved, such as negligence of employees that had a great negative impact on the environment and the spread of virus. However, merely having this problem fixed doesn't mean that the Carnival is evaluated as sustainable and promising company for investment. Each passenger on a cruise ship produces about 160 kilograms of carbon per day. This amount is about 15 times larger than the average daily emission by a regular person worldwide. Carnival Cruise Line is never sustainable unless it deals with this fundamental problem of the cruise industry. From now on, we will propose solutions that not only make Carnival Cruise go beyond this weakness in the existing CSR sectors, but also make Carnival Cruise grow into a paradigm shifter that is completely transforming the cruise industry. Through our proposal, Carnival Cruise will achieve creating shared value, which generates greater social value along with achieving better economic performance.
First recommendation is to create the Eco Cruise Line, which is an eco-themed cruise tour product. Eco Cruise consists of 2 elements, Eco Project and Eco Vessel. First, Eco Project will actively encourage recycling on board by introducing waste baskets with different colors. Environmental officers of Carnival, whose role is to monitor the implementation of environmental procedures so far, can provide education about how to recycle and help passengers. By 2025, Eco Project aims at a recycle rate of 40%. Second, we recommend sailing with an eco vessel instead of existing cruise ships. Existing vessels use marine fuel, which contains up to 3,000 times higher sulfur oxides than gasoline. Also, as you can see in this energy consumption structure of the cruise ship, more than half of energy is used for power generation and heating. So our eco vessel is designed to produce energy in an eco-friendly way while reducing energy consumption for heating at the same time. Eco vessel basically produces energy by LNG-powered engines and renewable energy system installed outside the ship, such as wind power generator and solar panel. LNG is way eco-friendlier than marine oil since it does not contain sulfur oxides. Renewable energy facilities will cover a significant portion of the ship's electricity use, aiming to supply 100%. And according to research, large energy consumption for heating is because of inefficiency of the existing engine. So EcoVessel will have advanced engine electronic control system and will be equipped with a device that utilizes engine heat for room heating. Strengthened insulation of the EcoVessel will also play an important role. Currently, Carnival plans to introduce 11 LNG-powered vessels by 2025. Equipping these vessels with renewable energy facilities that can cover 100% of the Carnival's average onboard electricity use would incur an additional cost of $46 million per ship. However, as this cost would save the fuel that had been used for electricity production, a total net present value of $21 million will be generated over 20 years of vessels' estimated useful life. Like this, Eco Cruise Line is a new business model in which leisure and environment are harmonized. In 2025, we aim to expand Eco Cruise Line to account for 10% of total revenue, and accordingly, substantial environmental impacts are expected to follow. Also, we propose 1% of Eco Cruise Line profit to be donated to environmental organizations. Therefore, this new business model will reverse negative appraisal for Carnival Cruise at the moment, since it is not just carrying out CSR, but creating shared value that enables a company and the society to coexist.
As we first analyzed, negligence has caused critical problems for the company so far. As a breakthrough to solve this problem, we suggest a domino model. The domino model consists of two parts, in and out system and responsible wage system. First is in and out system as domino distancing, which is eliminating the possibility of plotting malicious acts by introducing an objective indicator. The in and out system innovatively tracks and manages various waste generated from sailing. Based on an AI simulator built on various voyage data, in and out system predicts the amount and type of trash generated during the voyage and even the point of occurrence by considering various factors such as sailing times, conditions, passengers, and so on. Therefore, it is possible to monitor the amount of trash all the time and initiate an investigation if it is less than the appropriate amount, which blocks the unethical trash dumping of employees. Our second model, responsible wage system as domino strengthening, aims to make employees firmer, not being swayed by temptation. We expect that even if there is an external temptation, employees will resist it for financial incentives if they are excessively evaluated with their CSR scores. For a short-term solution, employees will be provided bonuses based on their ethical performance scores, and when this is settled, in the long term we propose putting high weight on CSR scores and setting wages. So far, we have learned about the domino model, which will be the key of solving the dishonesty problem. We estimate the cost of in and out to be about $300,000, and additional costs such as investigation costs is also predictable, but they will be much smaller than the fines expected when the current situation holds or the loss from their harmed image. Also, the positive impact way overpasses the cost. For in and out system, an objective standard will eliminate the room for an immoral plot. With the system, the tragedy of magic pipe will not be repeated. Also, as data for waste is accumulated, the company can utilize this data to find the most effective way to reduce the total amount of waste. For example, which method of sailing generates the least amount of fuel dregs. The responsible wage system will solidify Carnival to be the pioneer of fulfilling social responsibility among its peers, and furthermore, contribute to making Carnival as a paradigm shifter in the cruise industry. Now, we would like to share our final decisions about investment.
We proposed an active investment. It is because we saw a huge investment opportunity in Carnival, which is firmly maintaining its #1 position in the cruise industry despite many controversies. Through active investment in Carnival, we will make Carnival an industry-leading player, not just an economic leader. Our specific investment plans follow this table. We will invest about $1 billion in 2021 to secure about 5% of share. Actually, this year is the opportunity to acquire management control as the stock price dropped significantly due to COVID-19 risks. With 5% of share, we could exert meaningful influence on decision-making as top 3 investors. By persuading other investors, we plan to finish implementing the Domino model by 2024, launching the Carnival Eco Cruise line in 2022, and secure a total of 11 eco vessels operating by 2025. We also detected a risk that there might be a disagreement with managers and we might fail to persuade other investors for implementing recommendation. However, we found that the major investors of Carnival corporations are representative ESG investors such as Vanguard and BlackRock Group, who will prefer our recommendation plans. In 2025, when the recommendations are fully implemented, Carnival will grow to be a CSR leader and improve its ESG ratings too. As sustainable fund market, including ESG, is expanding, this change will attract more investors and make Carnival a dominant leader. Assuming that the COVID risk will be resolved by 2022, we judged that the stock price will be highly probable to renew the past high price by 2025. Through this investment plan, Carnival will grow into a paradigm-changing leader, and Denali Sovereign Fund will earn more than 242% in return, which will be thus a reasonable voyage for both. Thank you for listening, and we are looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Team 4. Team D4, we will now ask our judges to begin the Q&A period.
I had a question, if I can start. Make sure that's all right. One, in your financial analysis, I didn't hear about the debt that Carnival took on in 2020. Can you talk a little bit about how that increased debt may impact Carnival's ability to reinvest in these really creative ESG ideas?
I can answer that question. I think it is really possible to finance by issuing new bonds. Carnival Cruise cash reserve is about $9.3 billion US, so it is definitely impossible to cover all 11 vessels with internal cash. In addition, compared to the same industry, Royal Caribbean as of the 2024 quarter has a debt-to-equity ratio of 270%, and Norwegian Cruise Line as of 2023 quarter has a debt-to-equity ratio of 293%. But the debt-to-equity ratio of Carnival Cruise Line is somewhat lower at about 160%. So I think it's definitely possible to issue new bonds for the financing. And also 74% of the Carnival Cruises assets are fixed assets. So using more leverage will not increase the bankruptcy cost significantly. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, hi. I have a question about the ESG ratings that you gave to various areas, eco, legal, ethical, and philanthropic. How did you determine those ratings? I wasn't quite sure how you got to those the letters that you gave them.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
do you mean that the word we said CCC is
Not the CCC, no, the part where you went step by step through each of the ratings and you at each of the aspects, and then you gave each of those a rating.
Maybe I can answer that question again. Yeah. We also thought of the ESG evaluation method to evaluate the CSR of the Carnival Cruise Lines, but actually we did not use the ESG evaluation method because there were some problems of the ESG evaluation method. And first thing is the disagreement between the notable ESG evaluation institutes. And the second thing is that ESG evaluation method was a lot more focused on ethical aspect of the company. But we thought that the corporate CSR is not only about the ethical responsibility, but also making the whole corporate value chain more responsible for both nature and society. And what we used is the Carroll CSR pyramid model, which has an ethical and economic, legal, and philanthropic, which covers the whole value chain of the corporation. And the method that we have used is by relative evaluation in some aspect, especially in ethical aspects. Did that answer your question fully?
Yeah, so the name of you used a body of work, a metric that was called Carroll?
Yeah, Carroll CSR pyramid.
Thank you.
And can I build up with the answer? Yeah, so for the criteria for evaluating the ethical responsibility, we use labor management, safety and quality, and environment. And these criteria were actually set with considering the stakeholders at the top priority. As the investment managers of the Denali Fund, we aim to invest in sustainable companies, and therefore evaluating whether the three cruise giants are fulfilling their responsibilities to stakeholders were regarded the most important. So for an objective and thorough evaluation, the three criteria, environment, safety and quality, and labor management, we actually adopted from the ESG ratings of MSCI, but the detailed items for the three criteria, such as sexual assault or COVID-19 response, are our own standards in consideration of timeliness, comparability, and the representative stakeholders, such as customers and staff members and the communities. I hope this gave you an answer.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question. I saw that you kind of, it's about their dishonesty. And so I saw that you have some incentives, some financial incentives to sort of try to get at that and get them acting and behaving in more ethical ways, right? I just want to make sure I understand sort of, you know, what are how do you solve for those drivers? I mean, what makes as you see it, all inclusive, what makes a dishonest company honest? You know, how does that happen here?
I think you mean, just for the clarification, you mean the top, how can we persuade the top management level and senior executives by our domino model suggestion?
Yeah, I guess I'm picking up that you're relying on financial incentives.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand sort of how you round that whole equation out. You know, in terms of it, you know, if that's what you're relying on, that's fine. I'm not trying to, you know, suggest anything. I'm just trying to understand how you see that working. You know, what's the success rate? How do you get somebody to behave more honestly? Is it financial incentives in your mind that will do in this case? I guess is the question.
I would like to answer about your question. Like for the second domino model, we propose the domino strengthening, which is the responsible rate system. And yeah, we agree that it would be perfect if the employees are voluntarily ethical without such financial measures. But we thought that if it's not possible, financial incentives can work as a second best solution. Like, if you so can you share the appendix, Sungyeon, please? So if you see the appendix about the incentive plan for management, the next page, yes. Thanks. If you see this slide, this is the compensation plan for management released in 2015. And as you see, until now, Carnival's incentive and compensation system has focused on achieving target operating income rather than the CSR scores. So we thought that it will be an effective way to strengthen employees' sense of ethics if they are given incentives according to the CSR scores, or if the CSR scores of each department are reflected to the wage negotiations.
May I add one more thing? And we not only about the financial incentives, we also have system called in and out system, which gives us the objective measurements of to prevent some kind of dishonest or negligence of the employees, and it'll make unethical behavior or procedure more complicated to accomplish than before. Thank you.
Thank you.
So am I understanding correctly that this incentive plan is directed at the senior management level, or are you going down through the organization to the employees who are actually physically on the ships?
So this Donna model responsible wage system actually carries the incentive system for both the staff members or the crew members on the ship and also the senior managers.
Follow-on question to that, it seemed to me from your presentation that labor management received an A rating, yet the case study says that labor is underpaid and overworked. How did you arrive at that rating?
Because we use the relative evaluation method among cruise companies, that's why Carnival Cruise is evaluated relatively high in labor management. But also, while working hours and wages may seem insufficient compared to the US standards, many low-wage workers on Carnival Cruise are people from underdeveloped countries. And by these countries' standards, they are paid sufficiently compared to other jobs such as plantation work. But above all, it cannot be said that it is not sustainable because the Carnival provides room and board. It's like a win-win situation when US manufacturers building factories where labor is cheap and providing employees with relatively better jobs while lowering their production costs. And in addition, the Carnival Cruise is currently operating a variety of employee safety and training and welfare programs, and the employee satisfaction is high according to the survey results. However, in the long-term perspective, we definitely think that the Carnival should definitely try to improve their labor conditions, but just not in the radical way.
Thank you, judges, and thank you, team, for the Q&A. Time is up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Team D4. For our audience watching our YouTube live stream, a reminder that we will now transition to a brief holding screen while we bring our next team on to join us. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility. We are very excited to introduce Team A4, which competed yesterday with a group of 5 other teams and emerged the winner from the preliminary round. Michael Helzer, our timekeeper, will now share the rules around timekeeping and the methodology for sharing time. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Rachel, and welcome to the final round. You will have 15 minutes for your presentation and 10 minutes to answer questions from the judges. I'm Michael, I'm your timekeeper. I will announce in the chat when there are 5, 2, and 1 minute remaining. If your team is not finished with their presentation when the timer runs out, I will speak up and you must stop the presentation. If the team finishes before the 15 minutes are over, we will proceed directly to the 10-minute question and answer period. No extra time will be allotted for Q&A. Team A4, go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you.
Andre Giddy says, one doesn't discover new lands without consenting to lose sight for a very long time of the shore. For me, when I was 11 years old, that came in the form of being aboard a floating petri dish, in other words, a cruise ship, for days amidst a norovirus outbreak. Dodging the virus, taking precautions, and impatiently awaiting disembarking ashore. But hey, it was all worth it. St. Thomas, Grand Turk, and San Juan were beautiful islands and were so worth the sickness at sea. We're Team A4, AJ DeGrotto, Jade Glab, Kenneth Tan, and Katie Wang, and we're here to discuss Carnival Corporation. In short, today we will discuss how Carnival can improve its CSR by improving its safety and health, environmental awareness, and work culture on board. We will cover our recommendation in which we intend to implement a 3-pronged approach, and also discuss Carnival's future as a successful company and investment. We will also discuss the prospect of an alternative investment, one that might be more likely to outpace Carnival in its success as a company. I'd now like to pass it off to Katie, who will discuss the firm analysis.
Thank you, Jade. Moving into an overview of the firm, we'll take a look at Carnival Corporation's general business model, the recent financial performance, and noteworthy events. Carnival is currently the world's largest leisure travel company and specializes in operating international cruise lines. They provide vacations to cruise destinations, visiting approximately 700 ports across the globe. Carnival operates globally with 2 main segments. The first is their NAA segment, consisting of North America and Australia, and the second is their EAA segment with Europe and Asia. Their NAA segment operates lines including Carnival Cruises and Princess Cruises, while EAA operates Costa Cruises, P&O, and more. The majority of Carnival's revenue comes from their cruise operations, including initial ticket sales and passenger spending on board. However, in addition to cruises, the firm also owns and operates hotels, lodges, railcars, and motor coaches. Taking a brief look at their financials, Carnival has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Amidst cruise cancellations, Carnival's revenue has dropped 73% in 2019, while expenses only fell 18%. Their long-term debt also surged from $9.7 to $22 billion in 1 year. However, Carnival's competitors are also having difficult fiscal years since the entire cruise industry has been negatively impacted. Last, some major events concerning Carnival include the COVID-19 pandemic and violating environmental regulations, most recently in 2016 and 2019, which involve illegal dumping of waste into the ocean.
When analyzing the cruise industry at large, we came across 3 major trends. First, COVID-19 has ravaged not only Carnival, but the entire cruise industry. The average revenue of the industry's 3 major players went from an increase of 10.7% in 2019 to a decrease of 73% in 2020. Secondly, cruise lines have had to take a more segmented approach when it comes to attracting new passengers. As Generation Z is anticipated to outpace millennials in cruise favorability, the industry has reacted by making some cruises more luxury and some more affordable for young passengers. With regard to CSR initiatives, the industry is infamous. It limits its use of international reporting guidelines and does not utilize third-party assurance. I'd now like to pass it off to Kenneth, who will discuss competitor analysis.
Thank you, Jade. So now we want to turn to how Carnival compares with its peers and competitors within the cruise industry, and we want to view this through a CSR perspective. The 3 key metrics for CSR, and in particular for the cruise industry, are worker satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and environmental and social governance. When compared with its cruise industry peers, Carnival is actually quite average with all three regards. The CSR transgressions that Carnival has been involved in are not unique to Carnival, because both Royal Caribbean and Norwegian Cruise Line, which are Carnival's two key competitors, have also faced legal action in the past concerning employee pay and dumping. But Royal Caribbean has already taken earlier and more aggressive initiatives to turn a new page through partnerships with environmental groups and improving anti-pollution ship technology already. On the flip side, though, Norwegian has been much slower in addressing its CSR problems. Carnival has been undertaking good steps to improve its CSR, such as Carnival's new LNG ship initiative. But even though Carnival is on an upward trend, there's still very much room for Carnival to improve, which puts Carnival right in the middle of the pack here. We also included Disney Cruises here as a benchmark to show that having quality cruises while still maintaining good CSR is viable within this industry. So from this, we can see that Carnival's greatest area of improvement lies within regards to environmental and social governance. But who are these people who are affected by Carnival's CSR? We found 5 key stakeholders: passengers, crew members, port and coast communities, the world, and shareholders. So first, the passengers. Passengers are affected directly by the air quality on a ship. In 2018, a study found that air pollution on board Carnival ships could reach up to 5 times worse than a busy street in Beijing. Employees and crew members are obviously negatively affected by this air pollution, but in addition to this, they're affected by the low wages that they're paid. From numbers revealed by Carnival in 2018, crew member median income aboard Carnival ships was less than half the median income in the US that year. Port and coast communities and the world, or more specifically, Earth's overall environment that affects everyone across the world, also stand as stakeholders, as Carnival ships alone emitted 10 times more sulfur oxide than all of Europe's cars combined in 2017. And sulfur oxide has already been linked with heart and lung disease, and of course, the destruction of marine ecosystems. And lastly, shareholders in Carnival are hurt when negative reputation associations come to the company that they have ownership in. And so now I'll pass it back to Katie to introduce our CSR recommendations.
All right, so now we're going to set course for some new seas ahead with our 3-pronged plan to improve CSR. First, Carnival should implement broader safety measures post-COVID to prevent illnesses before they spread. Second, Carnival can partner with environmental groups to promote net zero environmental impact. And third, Carnival should affirm employee well-being by enacting new workplace policies. Sailing into our first recommendation, we believe that Carnival should implement 2 new policies, collectively the Safe Seas Initiative, to promote passenger and crew member safety on board even after the COVID pandemic. First, Carnival should implement a limited capacity policy for enclosed areas vulnerable to crowding, such as fitness areas or pools. For operational efficiency, guests can choose to RSVP for these areas ahead of time. This policy is low cost and easy to implement, but will significantly improve both customer safety and satisfaction, since one of the most common cited cruise complaints is overcrowding. Through limited capacity, Carnival can strike 2 birds with 1 stone. Second, widespread access to clean hygiene is important, particularly in enclosed areas. To promote general well-being, Carnival should implement hand sanitizer stations across all their cruise lines. Carnival can also consider periodically rolling out implementation across their lines to diffuse costs. Now I'll hand it off to AJ for our second CSR recommendation.
Thank you, Katie. With our next recommendation, we want to delve a bit deeper into an environmental initiative and also alternative partnerships. First, let's look at internal improvements. 30% of Carnival's total revenue comes from their onboard purchases, which includes their merchandise. Now, oftentimes within the cruise industry, this is more of an afterthought. They don't really pay much attention into the merchandise that's being sold on board. However, since it's such a significant portion, we would suggest redefining our onboard purchases by partnering with more socially conscious suppliers such as ethics merch or eco bags. Now, the great thing about this is not only would we be selling greener products on board, but we would also be able to maintain an over 80% profit margin on those items. Additionally, we can look outwards towards organizations such as 1% for the Planet or the Nature Conservancy. Additionally, this would improve our PR perspective but also help contribute to a cause greater than ourselves, which would really go quite a far way.
So the third and final prong is affirming crew well-being. Customer service is of utmost importance in the cruise industry, and customer service is primarily delivered through the crew. We recommend that Carnival implement free texting via WhatsApp for all crew members so that crew members can always stay in contact with loved ones without the financial burden of consistently paying for wireless service with an already meager paycheck. This simple benefit boosts crew morale, which would lead to a 20% increase in productivity. And this then leads to improved customer service and guest experience, which bears high potential in translating to an increase in stock price. We also recommend to increase diversity on the board of directors and top management through giving priority to candidates of less represented backgrounds. We found that 77% of board members are found via referrals, and studies have consistently shown that management leading by example when focusing on diversity brings about higher employee engagement. So this translates to higher chances of surpassing financial goals, which is something that Carnival really needs to do post-pandemic. And better employee engagement reduces turnover, which is a very real problem as indicated by the rather high 30% turnover rate within this industry. But we continue on with the impacts of our C plan. Under our three-pronged CSR strategy solution, all 5 stakeholder groups will see and experience the benefits. Passengers will have cleaner air and even better customer service and safety. Crew members will have further improved work culture and more care for their mental health and well-being. Coast communities and the environment will be supported through our environmental partnerships, and shareholders, as owners of Carnival, will benefit from a better Carnival with strong CSR.
Now, let's try to figure out a timeline to apply this and plot our chart ahead. We decided to divide the timeline into 3 phases: the initial phase, implementation, and followed by continuation phase. First, we'll start with safety planning and employee benefits. This will be an initial plan out phase where we further refine our goals, and the overall cost identified with our safety planning and initiatives would be around $500,000, whereas our employee benefits program would be at a cost of around $300,000. It's important to note that this combined fee or increased cost would be very small compared to the overall revenue of the company, even with its 73% decline. Next off, we'll move on to merchandise additions and safety implementation. This is a phase where we actually begin to roll it out onto ships before they start seeing customers. And finally, we have our broader rollout phase. This is when customers actually come on board and see the differences within each and every time they board the ship. This is a broader timeline here because it's really quite variable given our current circumstance with the coronavirus. So we allotted a wider time frame for reference. It's also important to note that we'll have a realignment phase. So we want to create a continual feedback loop by always adjusting our initiatives to plan for the future and to really see what impact we're creating. Now we'll move on to our final investment decision. Now, as an outside investor, we had to weigh a couple areas. First was the ethical history of the company, and next we weighed the financial environment. And both of these have a relatively negative outlook. First, with the ethical history of Carnival cruise ships, we noticed that there tends to be an environment of legal unaccountability and environmental disregard. Now, this is most likely due to the fact that these cruise ships and the overall industry is operating on international waters, and so it's relatively hard to regulate the industry as a whole from issues like dumping, which Carnival Cruises had to pay a fine for as recently as 2019. So on this end of the spectrum, we see some slight issues. In addition to that, we'll consider the financial environment. Carnival Cruise Line's short-term debt has increased over 1,000% year over year. Their long-term debt has more than doubled. And within that same time period of 12 months, the revenue has decreased by 73%. Now, overall, this shows a very risky outlook for the overall company. Now, this is also reflected by their bond rating falling into junk bond territory and them being identified as a fallen angel, meaning they used to be investment grade, however, due to these financial circumstances, have fallen significantly. As such, we really consider that it's outside of the risk appetite of our investment fund, and as a result, would consider it as a sell stock rather than a buy, and overall have a negative outlook. Alternatively, let's look at Trip.com. Trip.com has lower overhead because it's online platform. It has committed itself to improve COVID regulation, ESG goals, and has an overall strong culture. Finally, let's note that their stock has completely recovered since COVID, whereas Carnival's has not. Now, let's end with Jade taking us through the entire presentation in review.
In conclusion, we've covered the operational, financial, and CSR issues that pertain to Carnival and industry competitors. We've recommended a CSR improvement plan that consists of improving safety and environmental awareness and cultivating an affirmative work culture. While we wish Carnival its best path forward, we understand that it's a risky investment and believe our alternative is better. Perhaps on this platform, the norovirus like the one I experienced won't spread like wildfire. Thank you for your time, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Team A4. We'll now ask our judges to begin the question and answer period.
I had a question, a follow-up. You had mentioned partnering with some environmental initiatives, and on that slide you had mentioned over 80% profit margins. How did you determine that high of profit margins on merchandise on board?
Sure. So if we go down to that slide, just give me 1 second. So we decided to, first we came up with the 30% number from Carnival's annual 10K filing, which was pretty easy to find. Next, we came up with the profit margin by actually looking at how much it would cost with these partner institutions. So Ethics, Merch, and Eco Bags both are, currently public with how much their contracts would cost depending on the amount of items we purchase, as is Carnival Cruises with their online store, and they show the various onboard purchases they have. And so it's a pretty easy calculation just looking at the difference between what Carnival currently charges for their items and looking at what Eco Bags would contract them for. So for example, with the tote bags, Eco Bags is under $5 a piece, whereas Carnival sells their current tote bag online for over $60. So we were actually trying to be a bit more conservative with the 80% figure, but with highly popular items such as the Carnival tote bag, it could actually be even higher than that.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing.
I have a question about your financial analysis. I saw toward the end, I noticed the analysis around the debt. Was there other aspects of the financial analysis that you performed?
Sure. So I could also answer that question. And thank you for bringing that up. We thought financial analysis was especially important in these situations. So I'd say there are a couple different areas that we considered. First off was the overall amount of debt that the company was ensuing, which we already outlined was drastically higher than it has been in the past. In addition to this debt, we wanted to consider the profitability of these companies. So it's important to note also that their revenue has decreased substantially. And then finally, we decided to look at their cash flow as well. As it stands, Carnival has negative EBITDA, whereas our alternative investment, Trip.com, has a positive EBITDA and historically has a relatively high gross profit margin of nearly 75 to 80% over the past 4 years. So really the issue here comes not only to the amount of debt, but the ability to finance that debt. And it's pretty clear from our analysis that Carnival Cruise Line, as it stands, won't really have the cash flow to finance that large amount of debt that it's taking on.
So a follow-up question, with respect to the poor performance Did you contemplate the possibility of a low-cost purchase in the current environment and then project out into the future when they return to business as usual without COVID?
Yeah, so I think that could be a consideration of a low-cost purchase. But again, we really didn't see it as the investment criteria of a sovereign wealth fund. So overall, we have to consider that our investment appetite should be relatively low risk compared to maybe a high yield fund or something with a much broader and higher risk appetite. Instead, we're looking for mostly equity investments, and that's going to be at the lowest level of the capitalization of the company. So as a result, we would consider that strategy relatively high risk. And although it could be very high reward if it turned out to be true, overall, we would like to look for a company where we could invest in equity and see, reasonable returns for that price with relatively low risk, while on top of that, looking at an ethical company as well.
I believe I saw in your analysis that you compared Carnival's performance not only to its peers, but you included Disney. And I'm kind of wondering why Disney wasn't considered as an alternative investment, given that it's somewhat diversified even within that stock, right? Because it's an entertainment company. Could you speak more to that?
Sure. Kenneth, would you like to take a first stab at this, and then I could follow in as well?
Definitely. So we still want to keep in line with the whole travel industry sort of sphere. And we recognize that even though Disney is very diversified, its interest within the cruise industry is still not very large. So we don't want to stray too far from Carnival's primary and only involvement in the travel industry. So looking at comparable companies such as Royal Caribbean or Norwegian Cruise, which also are publicly listed, they are also not very financially. They are also in the same sort of rut that Carnival is in as well right now. And I think AJ can talk us through why Trip.com in particular stood out to us.
Yeah, sure thing. So again, like Kenneth mentioned initially, we wanted to look at something within like the travel and leisure sector vertical. And going off of that, we found that a lot of these cruise line companies had significant overhead that they had to overcome because they have to own these large assets such as cruise liners. Now, we decided to circumnavigate that issue by looking towards travel companies that don't necessarily have that same overhead, which is really what attracted us to Trip.com. And so again, Disney, I think, could have been an attractive choice. That said, they seem to be quite diversified, so it might not be the vertical that we're looking for. So instead, if we're choosing to narrow ourselves down to a travel company that's reasonably financed, that has a relatively positive outlook and relatively lower risk level, then we would choose Trip.com for those exact reasons.
Judges, there is time remaining if you have further questions.
I have a question. In regards to choosing Trip.com, can you talk a little bit about other travel industry, so non-cruise, but other travel industry alternatives that you looked at?
Yeah, sure thing. So we thought about airlines at first. We thought about maybe mobile transportation, so things such as trains, vehicle, car companies, RVs, things like that. But at the end of the day, one common factor we noticed, and including hotels as well. One common factor we noticed is this large and significant portion of hard assets that are going to be on their books. So in the case of an airliner company, it'd be the planes that they're flying. In the case of the cruise company, it would be the cruise ship. These are relatively straightforward issues, but The really difficult portion about that is when revenue falls to the same extent that it has historically over 2020, they end up with a large portion of debt that they needed to finance these hard assets that they keep on their book. But the issue is now that their cash flow to pay off those assets is relatively diminished. So as a result, we really tried to find something that, maybe has a higher growth future, which Trip.com does, but also we wanted to try to find something that would mitigate the risk that we see in the travel industry. And so it's very difficult to find something that would mitigate those risks to the same extent that Trip.com does. And again, that's mostly because it's an online company. So they don't have to suffer from those same limitations that far too many travel companies do. And additionally, this was very important because our equity investment, as I mentioned earlier, we want to, have a situation where we are within a comfortable margin of safety, where we don't have to be at risk from other investors or other, liens on the company.
So, thank you.
I'm curious about, you came up with an alternative investment. I'm curious as to why you stuck with the travel industry generally, given the decline and the cautiousness that we all have about travel now. Why did you choose that to continue it as an alternative investment? Why did you think about that, staying in the sector?
Mm-hmm. Well, part of it was the assumption that, the investment fund was looking to stay within the travel vertical. And additionally to that end, even if we weren't supposed to stay within that vertical, we do think that, right now there could be quite a wide mispricing because people automatically assume that the travel industry is bound to underperform when in reality companies like Trip.com are actually doing relatively well compared to others.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Team A4. Our time for questions is up.
Thank you very much, Team A4. We appreciated your presentation, and we would like to remind our audience briefly that we will return to a holding screen while we prepare for our third finalist group to come and give their presentation. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome back to the 10th Annual Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility. It is now my pleasure to introduce Team B5, which is our third competitor today. And before they get started with their presentation, our timekeeper, Michael, will review the rules for timekeeping and the methodology for communicating the time countdown. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, everyone, and welcome to the final round. You will have 15 minutes for your presentation and 10 minutes to answer questions from the judges. I'm Michael, am your timekeeper. I will announce in the chat when there are 5, 2, and 1 minute remaining. If your team is not finished with their presentation when the timer runs out, I will speak up and you must stop the presentation. If the team finishes before the 15 minutes are over, we will proceed directly to the 10-minute question and answer period. No extra time will be allotted for Q&A. Team B5, go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. We are Team B5, and today we'll be discussing the impact investment into Carnival Corporation. My name is David Hennock, and my team here with me today include Alex Leipold, Josh Chen, and Ajay Shankar, and we represent Denali Sovereign Fund. Our fund's goal is to optimize stability, savings, and local development. The problem statement that we'd be focusing on is Carnival capable of manifesting changes to deliver quality cruises while also promoting ethically oriented practices? And with that, after exploring the problem statement, we discovered that Carnival is not an optimal investment opportunity for our sovereign fund's interests. Moving to the agenda, we'll start by understanding Carnival's practices, then we'll be zooming out with an industry evaluation. Next, we'll conduct a risk financial analysis, and then we're going to close it all off with some recommendations. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Alex to discuss Carnival's practices.
Thank you so much, Raven. So our team began by looking at Carnival's mission and vision, and we identified a strong commitment to corporate social responsibility. The company's vision consists of 3 key pillars. They are first, to protect the environment, second, to operate safely, and third, to be compliant. And in its 2019 sustainability report, the company highlights key actions that it's taking within each of these pillars. So for example, for the environment, investing in liquefied natural gas to reduce its footprint, to operate safely, ensuring a diverse and inclusive workforce, and finally, to be compliant, introducing an ethics and compliance program in 2019. So in the next few minutes, our team is going to present the research that we've conducted to fully confront reality. So let's begin with the environment. Here we know 2019 wasn't the best year for Carnival. Just 2 years prior, it was fined $40 million for dumping oil into the ocean. And in 2019, it was fined an additional $20 million for continuing to dump oil during the probation period. These together were the largest ever criminal penalties for intentional vessel pollution. So 2019 was a turning point though. The company began to patch its leaks. Indeed, it set and surpassed a 2020 carbon reduction goal, and it also set a 2030 carbon reduction goal. However, notably, the company lacked a clear and transparent commitment to a 2050 carbon reduction goal. What the company did do, it began to pioneer in the liquefied natural gas space, one of the cleanest fossil fuels. Leading climate scientists argue that this is an effective bridge technology for short-term benefit. However, in the long term, it may have adverse effects, leading to 70% more life cycle greenhouse gas emissions than marine gas oil. So now let's move on to social. Here, the company has received numerous recognitions, and these suggest that employee well-being is a priority. However, to really gauge social impact, it's important to look at the company's policies at sea. So let's do that now. Let's dive into one of the catastrophes at sea, the Costa Concordia catastrophe in 2012. Unfortunately, on that day, 32 passengers lost their lives, and this was mainly due to a lack of evacuation training and lack of safety on the company policy level. More recently, in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was clear that the company knew about the potential scale and scope of the pandemic, yet it continued sailing its ships, ignoring a CDC warning against doing so. This led to 1,500 infections and almost 40 deaths across its ship fleet. And finally, in terms of working conditions, the company has been promoted as a great place to work. However, that study doesn't distinguish between corporate and onboard positions. In that latter group, individuals often work 80+ hour weeks for less than $1,000 per month. Now, finally, let's look at governance. Here, it's clear that Carnival lacks consistency, accountability, and oversight. So in the interest of time, we'll again look at the COVID-19 pandemic response, here specifically on the Diamond Princess ship. It took Carnival 48 hours to respond after knowing about the initial infection until it let others on the ship know about this infection. Carnival even went on to say that it didn't know about the initial infection, but that was not true. The chief medical officer on board did know and had sent out an email. Finally, in terms of the industry, we know that Carnival is registered in Panama, mainly to avoid fees and regulations, and the company pays an average tax rate of about 1% in the US. What all of this leads us to conclude is that the company may not be able to be trusted, which is a critical factor in making this decision. Now to continue and zoom out and take a look at the industry, I'd like to hand it off to Josh.
Thank you, Alex. Our team wanted to take a very holistic look at the industry to understand where the factors are at play here. So there's 6 factors on your screen right now, but for sake of time, I'll just be touching on 2 important ones: technological factors and legal factors. Starting with technological factors, we know of certain technologies such as the lithium-ion battery that can reduce emissions by approximately 95%. However, these 4 factors below are the reasons why companies are not making that investment, notably the high capital expenditures and the low cost of savings. But really, who is it to argue that environmental benefits outweigh corporate profits? That's one reason why we do not believe this industry is in a good place right now. Moving on to legal factors, there's also certain factors at play that we need to bring up into the light. First and foremost, there are certain loopholes in the maritime laws that allow companies to take advantage of certain policies that, in effect, are very unfavorable to society. What all 6 of these factors we looked at represent is the fact that the industry as a whole is suffering from certain issues, not just Carnival itself. With that being said, we still wanted to take a dive and a deeper look into how Carnival sits within the industry. So to do that, we looked at 2 key indicators on this next slide. The first is a pollution reduction score, which evaluates how much effort a company is putting into their ships to reduce the amount of air and water pollution that their ships emit. The second is the number of criminal violations each company has incurred since 2000. To better understand where each company lies, we created this matrix to determine how much risk is associated with a certain degree of each of these indicators. And this is where each of these companies sit. We see here on the bottom right, Carnival is doing not so great. They had $82 million in fines since 2000, 14 violations, which is the most out of all big 4 companies, and the lowest pollution reduction score. And this is simply not something we want to see from the biggest player in the industry. Moving forward, we also wanted to take a look at how Carnival plays a role within the industry as a whole by doing a quick SWOT analysis. Notably, there are certain strengths and opportunities here, such as the new technologies that they have available to them to invest in. However, simply put, the weaknesses and threats highly outweigh the strengths and opportunities here. And to further elaborate, I want to pass it off to Ajay to talk more about the financial implications of investing.
Thanks, Josh. So let's first take a look at Carnival's current financial position. So on the left, you can see the stock price as of February 18th, as well as some key performance indicators. But let's mainly stick to the right with the 3 major financial concerns that we have. Looking at the stock price. Stock has dipped 47% from February 2020 to 2021. And there's waves of pessimism and poor outlook on Wall Street on when cruise lines are going to be able to resume operation. Second, it's the debt concerns. And looking at $15 billion of debt that Carnival has taken on and counting, it's becoming increasingly unsustainable. The third is the credit rating, which has been downgraded to junk, BB minus, in fact, by Standard & Poor's. Now, this downgrade suggests that Carnival is going to be unable to pay back its debt. So let's move on to Carnival's financial risks. So we mainly broke it up into our growth concerns, debt concerns, and liquidity concerns. And what we've done is we've segmented it by pre-COVID as well as the current outlook. So let's first start with the growth concerns. Really, the main takeaways here are that the company was dealing already with cost problems despite having solid revenue growth, but they're now dealing with a 73% decline in revenue and continued fixed costs. This leads us to suspect growth problems ahead. Second, it's the debt concerns. And for this section, the main takeaways are that Carnival had still taken on a lot of debt before the crisis and was paying it off slowly, but they've now taken on an unprecedented amount of debt. In fact, their long-term debt has increased by 112% and its borrowing high at 13%, leading us to suspect issues with long-term sustainability. Third, it's the liquidity concerns. We can see that Carnival has generally not had issues with liquidity, according to Moody's in 2019. However, the pandemic has created massive concerns about whether the company will run out of money given their debt and relatively low liquidity. Our concern is that Carnival doesn't have a backup plan, and it's banking on a speedy recovery, which is a really risky outlook. Now let's look into the financial implications of CSR. So we've already established that Carnival has been a laggard with CSR, but could strong CSR help the company through this pandemic? Research actually suggests so. In fact, according to multiple journals and associations, we can see that strong CSR performance can preserve firm value at high debt levels and protect over-leveraged firms from going bankrupt. Additionally, it can limit the negative impacts of recessions for those companies who continue their investment. However, weak performance can lead to cash flow issues and inability to pay debt holders, as well as decreased profitability. Our recommendation section is going to go into more detail of how Carnival can actually improve their CSR, but for the time being, let's move on to a risk assessment. So we created this risk assessment to illustrate the problems ahead for Carnival and reinforce why it isn't an optimal investment at this time. In the interest of time, we're going to focus on a couple key risks. One, it's the inability to pay off debt. Most alarming is the likelihood that Carnival's not going to be able to pay off their large debt in time, and it's going to cause massive shocks to the company. Second, it's the legal and health troubles. Even with the possibility of getting back to cruising soon, legal and health troubles are still going to loom as Carnival's going to have to deal with increased regulation and safety overhauls. Finally, and most importantly, there's an uncertain look on Carnival's continued investment into the CSR space, as the company has been mum on their sustainability plans since they've been unoperational during 2020. I'll now pass it over to Fabian to talk about some of our recommendations that we have for Carnival Corporation.
Thank you, Ajay. So moving into our recommendations. Over the years, Carnival has violated several crimes against the environment, and they should be making efforts to reverse them. Our first recommendation is for Carnival to finance into the research and development space to help minimize the impact their company has on our planet. A space they could research more into is the technological innovation space, where they can use biofuel, battery, and many other clean powers to continue ship operations as usual. And somewhere they could develop into is finding ways to eliminate the downfalls that come with cold ironing. The potential cost of financing more into the R&D space could range anywhere between $200 to $400 million over the next 10 years. And some benefits we do foresee this recommendation is having a significantly cleaner environment and also better air quality. We do anticipate that R&D will save in long-term costs, improving quality of operations, and also combat those environmental challenges that Carnival faces in the coming years. Moving into our next recommendation, which addresses Carnival's current operations. Carnival is currently underpaying and overworking its employees significantly. Even safety at work is a concern, as we've seen with the most recent COVID-19 pandemic, with thousands of employees being stuck at sea with no transparency from Carnival on possible next moves. In Carnival's vision statement states both openness and transparency at all times, and that's something the company needs to stay focused on to ensure quality care for all of its employees. So with that, our recommendation is to create an employee bylaws to hold themselves more accountable and promote regulation amongst all employees. Some things to include within these bylaws include increasing the median annual earnings and also placing a cap on the maximum hours employees can work in a week. Employees can foresee an increase in autonomy, wages, and employer expectations, which can all result in an increase and raise in customer satisfaction and even more motivated employees after improving these standards. Ending with our last recommendation for Carnival, as we've seen within the most recent sustainability report, it does mainly address short-term goals that have already been achieved. So with that, we recommend that Carnival make more long-term environmentally conscious investments. For example, jumping into 2040, they could plan to reduce relative CO2 emissions by at least 60% and ending in 2050 with goals of reaching net zero emissions. And we know both the 2040 and the 2050 goals seem a bit ambitious, but we do foresee them being feasible as companies within the shipping industry are already achieving and aiming for those goals, those exact same goals. And with that, we do want to re-emphasize that Carnival is not a viable investment opportunity for the fund to currently take on, but hopefully in the coming years, with these recommendations, it will be. Thank you so much. We're going to open up the floor for any questions.
All right. Thank you, Team B5. We'll now ask our judges to begin the question and answer period. You may start now.
there. Nice job, everybody. Appreciate it. I'm Amy. I wanted to quickly ask, it sounds like from the get-go, you guys are pretty clear this was not a smart investment. And I understand that. I can see as the kind of firm you're operating as. But I guess what would have, if you were to pick one or two things up front that might have changed your mind or would have given you pause to consider a different analysis, what would that have looked like? Because it definitely feels like you came out swinging with, no, this isn't working, even though you have a few ideas about what might change it in the long term.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for the question. I'm happy to take this one. So you are correct that it seems that we were sort of biased in that sense that we knew Carnival may not have been the best option. However, I think mainly our analysis drove us to that decision and we wanted to present it up front. But there are, I would say, three key aspects that may have changed our mind. The first would be the financial implications. We hope to see a bit of a stronger take on Carnival's part as being the largest player. However, COVID has impacted them just as much as it has the other players. So if we had seen a slightly stronger rebound, that may have changed our mind. The second would be a stronger industry as a whole. As we analyzed in our industry analysis, it's simply not a great industry to be in as a whole either. So if the industry could make that shift together, as all the big players have been, that could also shift our opinion. And the third would simply be the management level at Carnival. Alex touched upon this about how there's simply a lot of mismanagement and rigid business models that holds Carnival back from achieving that next level of both profitability and responsibility. So I would say that these three factors are really the key to changing our minds in this process.
You mentioned trust issues right up front with management. So how would you build accountability into your recommendations to assure that if these were implemented, that that you could trust management in the process?
Yeah, I could take this one. Thank you for the question, Judge Terry. So really going to our recommendations portion, why we mentioned the, I guess, distrust and also the distrust within the COVID pandemic was mainly to show that everything that we're using to evaluate the company was based on actions, not words, right? So a lot of what's in their mission statement and vision statement was stating that their openness for transparency and accountability, as you just mentioned. But if we look into recommendation 2, where we have an employee bylaw where more accountability, transparency in a written document would be given to employees and also holding them accountable in different spaces as well. I do want to reemphasize to Josh's point that he had mentioned that maritime law gives a lot of legal loophole and there's a lot of uncertainty in a lot of different spaces. So having something like a bylaw written down would really make them become more, or not make them, but give them opportunity to become more accountable.
So it sounds to me as though the cruise ship industry in total would most likely not be a recommended industry for us to invest in. Is that correct?
Yes, Judge, that's correct.
Touching on the legality, how would you have any recommendations for how, as a world community, we might deal with the legal and regulatory environment associated with this industry?
I'm happy to take this one too. That's a really interesting question and one that our team bounced around ourselves as well. And it ultimately comes down to how do we keep the world accountable for what these companies are doing? And looking into the UN, we know that they have their 17 sustainability goals, and that could be a really great place for us to start in changing maritime law. We know that maritime law currently is at its least strict level. So what happens to each of these companies when it becomes more strict? And the answer is they're simply not going to do as well as they have been. And we believe that the UN is a great place to start in implementing some of these laws, and getting a lot of these bigger countries on board with the new Biden administration could be a really great place to start to make that real conscious effort to change.
I have a question related to, Fabian, you had mentioned like the commitment, the bylaws to in the employees, or even signing on to the UN PRI standards. What would you, it's great to sign on, but how do we get transparency? We can make commitments in words, but how do we get transparency into this industry to ensure that those commitments are followed through?
Great question. Thank you so much for that. So really, there's no way of forcing a company to be transparent. It's what we're really looking into is a company should want to be transparent with their stakeholders. They should want to be able to disclose information to any stakeholders involved and moving forward from there. So really within the employee bylaws, it doesn't give them incentive. It just really solidifies their standards and what they should be really hoping and reaching for in the future. So that's going back to the sovereign fund's interest in what we're looking into is companies should want to be going above and beyond in terms of actions. And Carnival already has really that platform there. We're reading through the mission statements and vision statements that the company has already implemented. And these are all great initiatives to state, but really looking into those actions and ensuring that they need to refocus back into their 1970s, when they started back in 1970s, their purpose and why they became a cruising industry. Because having fun on cruise ships are always great, but having transparency to all stakeholders involved want willingly, not forcibly, willingly, is something that we should be looking into.
I was wondering, you sort of described or alluded to that differential between how they treat employees on these ships versus, how they treat employees in their corporate environment. And if I understood you correctly, so I guess I'm asking you to confirm, it sounded like some of those awards actually pertain to the corporate environment. I don't know if I was correct or in the way I understood that, but maybe you could confirm that, as well as I'd love to get your thoughts on, it just seems almost counterintuitive. It seems like there would be talent needed in the ships because they're engaging with passengers. So what did you look at why they underpay and sort of mistreat that type of employee?
Yeah, I can take this one. Thank you so much for the question. Fabian, are you still able to share screen, or we could flip to an appendix slide for this one? We can go to slide 29. And that is true. So I'll first answer the question about the recognitions that it's received from Forbes, and with that divide. So those recognitions, it doesn't take into account, it doesn't distinguish itself between corporate and onboard. So it could still include some of the onboard members. The study I was referring to is the Great Place to Work study, where the company has been rated at a 76%, which is relatively high. But that study only takes into account the corporate employees, so not on board. So to answer that question. Now to highlight here on this slide, this showcases a bit the divide, and it may also be an issue of simply the corporate offices being on land and these huge ships, which are almost like small cities, so far away that there may be a disconnect between management actually seeing what's happening on ships. And so the quote here on the right shows CEO Arnold Donald saying that working conditions are excellent. They very well may be on some parts of the ship, but then you also have certain workers who are just working around the clock to provide the sheer scale that a cruise ship calls for. And we also see on the left here that in terms of the industry breakdown, the comparison is that Carnival is lagging in terms of that average salary paid to those employees. Finally, in terms of why they may be able to get away with that, we touched on before, regulation is very low in this industry. I believe only 5% of Carnival's onboard workforce is American citizens actually too. So in terms of working regulations, labor laws, that applies less here, and there's maybe less of a agency that can enforce that this company is really acting responsibly.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
We have 20 seconds remaining. No more questions? All right. Thank you so much, Team B5 and judges. We are through with the question and answer period.
Thank you so much. And on behalf of my team B5, we want to give a special thanks to the organizers and the judges for coming out today and making this happen for students during these uncertain times. And we also want to thank everyone else for joining us on this Friday afternoon. We hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, B5. We really appreciated your presentation and appreciated the judges' questions. As a reminder to our viewers on YouTube, we will now take a short break in order to be able to bring on our last group of student presenters. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the 10th Annual Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility. We are pleased to present our last presenting team of the day, Team C2. And with that, I will hand it over to our timekeeper, Michael, to explain the timekeeping rules and methodologies as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel, and welcome to the final round. You will have 15 minutes for your presentation and 10 minutes to answer questions from the judges. I'm Michael, I'm your timekeeper. I will announce in the chat when there are 5, 2, and 1 minute remaining. If your team is not finished with their presentation when the timer runs out, I will speak up and you must stop the presentation. If the team finishes before the 15 minutes are over, we will proceed directly to the 10-minute question and answer period. No extra time will be allotted for Q&A. Team C2, go ahead and start your presentation.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so hello everybody. My name is Serioza. My colleagues are Julia, Amog, and Corey, and we are very excited to share with you the results of our analysis on how the Denali Sovereign Fund should approach investing in Alaskan tourism. I see we have a few new faces in the audience today, so I just want to give some background about the fund. Denali is a sovereign fund, is an Alaska-based ESG fund. We have $3.5 billion in assets under management. We are modeled after the Alaska Permanent Fund, and we distribute profits to Alaskan citizens. As for our investment criteria, we aim for a target return of a consumer price index of at least plus 5%, and all of our investments require low volatility and must reflect the values of the Alaskan people.
Given this information, how should we, the Denali Sovereign Fund, approach investing in the tourism industry while prioritizing the environmental, social, and economic concerns of the Alaskan people? To start, we'll talk about industry drivers, both in Alaskan tourism and cruise lines in general. We'll then jump into a financial assessment of Carnival and its competitors, then hop over to an industry CSR report, then give our solutions for that CSR. We'll finally wrap things up with our official investment decision.
We began our analysis by looking at two key industry drivers, those being Alaskan tourism and the impact of COVID-19 on the cruise industry overall. The first thing we kept in mind was that 60% of summer tourists in Alaska come from cruise ships, meaning that the cruise industry is essential to Alaskan tourism. Also, despite the large and very impactful effects of COVID-19 on the cruise industry, 76% of customers took future credit over a cash refund, which indicates that many past consumers may still be willing to go on trips on cruise ships post-pandemic.
Now, there are two means of investments that we have to approach with Carnival Cruise Lines, debt and equity. We first evaluated debt as a means of investment. We found that it was far too risky to consider investing in. Carnival's credit rating has been downgraded 3 times over the past year, from BBB to B-, which is a junk bond rating. Over the same period, they've increased their debt levels by 150%, and they issued stock in Q4, which is often seen as a last resort for financing. All three of these factors are potentially leading indicators of bankruptcy, which leaves equity as their only option as a means of investment. However, we found that Carnival stock is overvalued. To value the stock, we created 2 dividend discount models, which you'll see on the left, a no growth model and an 11% dividend growth model. This is based on the assumption that the cruise industry can fully rebound in 2024, and that once it does, Carnival can maintain its $2 dividend. We use an 8.6% discount rate, which is based on Carnival's current capital structure. Based on the February 19th closing price of $24 per share, this represents approximately $4 of overvaluation. However, our analysis is based on Carnival's current discount rate, and due to the current riskiness of its debt, it is likely that creditors will start raising interest rates. Therefore, we conducted a sensitivity analysis, which you'll see on the bottom right. For even slight increases in the discount rate, the overvaluation per share dramatically increases. Now, Carnival is currently struggling, but competitors are performing even worse. S&P rated the credit health of the 3 major cruise companies, and Carnival was the only company to not be in the bottom quartile for any of the 3 key metrics. This leads us to believe that we should not invest in Carnival and that we cannot invest in the broader cruise industry as a whole.
On the CSR side, Carnival is a CSR leader, but only on the surface. To be fair, it is one of the industry's best. It was recognized for its CSR by Newsweek in 2019, won several awards over the years, and made great strides in its green energy programs. However, when you actually look at its reports, there are too few operational definitions with definable metrics. This means that definitions of CSR success can be changed to fit Carnival's needs however it needs to. Carnival also lacks goals in key problems, and its CSR strategy is almost completely focused on sustainability, with no specific actionable items for issues like worker safety or accountable adherence to a code of ethics.
We then took a step back and analyzed CSR in the cruise industry overall. We identified 4 key trends based on academic articles we read, as well as our own observations. First, and perhaps most importantly, is that CSR is often not core to the cruise line business. It's a nice to have, but it's not a need to have in the eyes of many cruise lines. Also, there's a lack of formal reporting and limited third-party auditing, which creates a lack of transparency in the industry overall. And finally, most of the cruise lines are focused really on sustainability, as opposed to other types of CSR. And that is why for our recommendations, we focused on going beyond sustainability on the CSR front for Carnival.
Specifically, we propose 3 recommendations. The first, to optimize waste management. The second, to improve working conditions aboard ships. And third, to invest in regenerative cruises. To start with our first recommendation, we noticed that Carnival cruises generate a lot of waste. When a passenger steps aboard, they drastically increase their carbon footprint, the amount of sewage they generate, and the amount of water that they use per day. Also, Carnival has been fined millions of dollars for improper and illegal waste disposal, and both of these factors contribute overall to a waste management system that is very suboptimal. However, Carnival can improve this by optimizing their waste management system in 2 ways. First, they need to publicly and repeatedly commit to legal and environmentally friendly waste disposal to create a culture of accountability. What this means is that change needs to come from the top if they're really going to have an impact on the organization overall and prevent future legal fines of illegal waste disposal. Second of all, they should invest in new technologies in the waste management front, like autogasification and advanced water purification, to stay on the forefront in this area.
Crew members also face several challenges. For one, they are severely underpaid. The Guardian reported that Carnival can pay their workers as little as 75 pence per hour. They're also extremely overworked and are expected to work 20 hours per day and take on extra tasks if need be. This is especially true for ships with COVID-19 outbreaks. They also perform very dangerous tasks. The attorney Steve Lee states that because of these dangerous tasks, crew members often experience soft tissue or back-related injuries, burns, and exposures to viruses or other illnesses. The key to solving this, though, is technology and automation. This results in less danger and strain, a higher per-hour wage since the workers are more productive, and higher quality of work in general. For instance, Carnival could institute a conveyor dishwasher, which increases safety from hot water burns, increases productivity, and saves resources. Antiviral services could eliminate the need for harsher chemicals and makes everyone on the ship less at risk for illnesses. Programmable vacuums allow for faster cleaning and double the work in the same amount of time. Electric load lifters could reduce physical strain, especially on their backs, and handles more loads in less time. When looking at these implementations, it's easy to think that they would be very costly, but the costs quickly even out. For one, most of these are replacements and could occur with the normal replacements when cruise lines dry dock every 2 to 3 years or officially update every 5. Settlements are also extremely expensive. A single settlement in 2020 alone cost Carnival $1.36 million. Less settlements, more savings. It also just increases Carnival value. It increases the speed and quality of workers and creates a better experience for the customers of Carnival.
And our final recommendation for Carnival is to invest in regenerative cruises, which would give Carnival the opportunity to serve Alaska by bolstering the existing sustainable fishing and ocean cleanup efforts that are currently taking place in the state. For starters, there are 6 billion pounds of seafood that are harvested in Alaska every single year, and 8 million metric tons of plastic that end up in the ocean every year. And both of these facts represent an opportunity for Carnival to leave a positive impact on both its customers and the local communities that its ships visit. One of the ways Carnival can achieve this is by creating a co-op for Alaskan fisheries. Celebrity Cruises did something really similar with its Galapagos fisheries called the Daily Catch and had a lot of success. One benefit of this is that the local community will be financially supported, as the fisheries will have access to plants that will allow them to both efficiently and safely process, store, and sell their products. Another is that Carnival's cruise goers will be able to purchase seafood that they can be assured is not coming at the expense of the environment and the communities that they visit. Another regenerative cruise experience that Carnival should offer would come from partnering with the Center for Alaskan Coastal Studies. This organization offers an annual coastal cleanup that many of our cruise goers would certainly be interested in participating in. For those who aren't able to make that annual event, the Center for Alaskan Coastal Studies also offers guided tours 6 months out of the year, at which passengers can learn more about the local ecosystems and wildlife that they visit. And this would certainly make a worthwhile excursion for our more environmentally conscious cruise goers. Now, in order for us to invest, Carnival must reach the following benchmarks. Firstly, their current public-facing goal of 10% waste reduction is nowhere near ambitious enough. We would like to see them achieve at least 20%. In addition to that, we would like to see them decrease their worker injury claims by at least 25%. Further, we would like to see 1% of their revenue come from sustainable sources, such as regenerative cruises. And then finally, we would like to see them continue supporting all of their existing CSR measures.
If Carnival is able to implement all of our CSR recommendations, we believe they could create tremendous value for shareholders. To quantify this, we conducted a discounted cash flow analysis, and in the base case, the implied share price was $25 per share. If Carnival is able to improve their waste management, they would enjoy less legal fees due to lawsuits from dumping and a 5% increase in operational efficiency per year. This would raise their share price to $27 per share. If Carnival can improve worker safety and implement automation, they would again enjoy less legal fees due to worker lawsuits and enjoy a 10% decrease in yearly SG&A costs. This would raise their share price to $29 per share. And third, if Carnival is able to diversify revenue to sustainable sources, not only would they reduce the volatility of their cash flows, but they would enjoy a 1.5% increase in year-over-year revenue. And this would lead to a share price of $34 per share. If Carnival is able to implement all three of our CSR recommendations, we believe that they will be able to raise their share price to $40 per share and increase shareholder value by $14 billion. If Carnival is able to do this, we believe they would become a profitable and socially responsible investment for Denali to make. But due to the uncertainty of these factors, it is not an investment that we can currently make today.
Though we have decided to not invest in Carnival right away, we did come up with 3 alternative investment options, those being airlines such as Alaska Airlines, railroads such as Alaska Railroad, and tourism agencies such as Expedia. Tourism is a vital part of the Alaskan community. When evaluating these options, our 3 decision criteria were strong financial prospects, good CSR programs, and how much our investment may benefit the Alaskan people. As you can see, Alaska Airlines and Alaska Railroad come out fairly equally in the sum of this criteria. However, we decided that strong financial prospects and benefiting Alaska should be weighted more heavily as they reflect the core values of the Denali Sovereign Fund. Therefore, we suggest investing in Alaska Airlines.
An investment in Alaska Airlines would be particularly beneficial for the Denali Sovereign Fund for 3 reasons. The first is that 1 in 3 Alaskan tourists arrive via plane, and this number is likely to only increase as many consumers may be hesitant to try out cruise ships for the first time post-pandemic. Also, Alaska Airlines, their network is mostly focused on Alaska and the West Coast, which makes it a natural selection for our Alaska-based firm. And third, a 20% increase in Alaska Airlines bookings over the last couple of months indicates that they're already starting to recover and can only go up from here. Also, Alaska Airlines is a particularly good investment relative to other competitors for the following reasons. First of all, they've had lower daily cash burn since the start of the pandemic than their competitors. They also have optimal network geography because they tend to serve consumers who are going to national parks and beaches where you're better able to social distance, and thus people are more likely to want to take those kinds of vacations still. And then third, they're also less reliant on business travel, which many analysts predict is going to bounce back much less strongly post-pandemic than vacation travel.
Now, taking a look at our investment structure, we recommend a $700,000 investment in Alaska Air Group. The February 19th closing price was $62 per share, but we believe with the post-COVID travel boom projected, this can reach $98 per share in 3 years. Over this period, we would enjoy a 16% annualized return and create $370,000 in value for our shareholders.
Thus, we answered the essential question of how to invest in the tourism industry while prioritizing the environmental, social, and economic concerns of the Alaskan people. Our recommendations will deliver significant returns for Denali and Alaska, including people such as Aurora, who will see a positive financial and environmental impact on her community, as well as Joe, whose experience as a worker in the cruise industry would be drastically improved by Carnival accepting our other recommendations. Thank you, and we would like to open the floor for any questions.
Well, thank you. Team C2 will now ask our judges to begin the Q&A period.
I had a question. Oh, sorry, Judge Lori. Okay. I'm struck by the choice of Alaska Airlines as an alternative, more because my naive assumption is they are hard on the environment relative to operating aircraft. You had a slide that talked about the three factors, I think financial, CSR, and there was a third, and you did mention that the two other factors were your decision. Can you comment on that as an investment with that weight of that CSR or the environmental issue being operation of aircraft?
I will say that it is completely understandable to question our decision with Alaska Airlines as it has an effect on the environment. But as my colleague Corey mentioned, the impact of a person on a cruise line versus the impact of a person on an airplane is very different. Cruise lines have a much higher impact. Additionally, because cruise lines are not under the flag of the United States and fly under flags of convenience, simply by being an American company, Alaska Airlines is held to a higher standard than Carnival is via its environmental resources. Additionally, though Alaska Airlines CSR is nothing special, it still is at that higher bar that I mentioned before.
Thank you.
Hi there. I actually have a follow-on question to that. And it was something that you said, and maybe you sort of just addressed it with that slide, but you said that the values of Alaska and the profitability were more weighted heavier than the CSR components. But as an ESG investment fund, I'm struggling on the balance there. So I guess I just wanted to draw that out. And then also for Alaska Airlines in particular, are you operating on the assumption that their recovery from COVID will be faster than other parts of the industry? And if so, where is that prediction coming from?
I can take this one. So when we were doing our analysis between the three investment options, we realized that both railroads and airlines presented viable alternatives. And if you look at the slide, it shows that they're basically even, but vary in a couple of different metrics. And so we had to figure out, they're all important criteria for us, but because our principal purpose as a fund is to return profits to the Alaskan people, we decided to prioritize financial returns as well as benefiting the Alaskan people, since that is the purpose of our firm. Although all three criteria are, of course, important. And then the second part of your question was about, sorry, could you remind me what the second part was again?
I think it was more around the weighting. I think the circles aren't giving me enough data as to why one would be chosen over the other, since two of them are equal. And then the other part of my question you sort of addressed, which was, is there an assumption that Alaska Airlines is going to recover more quickly in the general travel industry than other options?
Oh yes, that was the analysis comparing it to other airline companies and why we think it would recover faster. And then the airline industry as a whole, we think will recover faster than other modes of transportation, just because we think people will be wanting to go on vacations post-pandemic, and airlines are a natural way to do that given the safety precautions that have gone in, and they haven't really had as much public scandal per se as Carnival, where they've had pandemic outbreaks on ships.
My question actually steps back a little bit to the beginning. I'm curious about why you decided to make the assumption, that the Denali was based in Alaska and you were going to focus on Alaska, given that this is a global company. I understand that that's a decision that you can make coming into the case, but I'm just curious as to why you decided to give it an Alaska lens, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason we decided to focus on Alaska specifically is because Alaska is one of the biggest ports for many of these cruise companies to go to. And Alaska also has a unique sovereign fund with the Alaska Permanent Fund. So we thought this could influence our understanding of, one, how to invest, and then two, why to invest in the cruise industry at all in the first place.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question about your technology and automation slide that you discussed, where you suggested the benefits outweigh the costs of implementing some of that technology. And did you consider the amount of jobs that would be lost on those ships because of the automation that would be implemented, and how that would affect the employee morale?
Yes. Specifically with our implementations, these are not taking jobs away from anyone, they are rather enhancing them. And since they are more enhancing it, we would still need the entire workforce. Additionally, even if some jobs are lost, though cruise lines are growing small, they're growing slowly, they are growing, and so they will need a larger workforce, so those people would eventually be back into the workforce.
I was gonna maybe just add to that a layer. You gave some conclusions about how Carnival could increase its share price, or you put some kind of data on the screens that showed that could increase. Could you summarize just what would be the top one or two drivers from your recommendations that you feel would account for that kind of an increase in the share price?
Absolutely. I'll just jump back into the slide to show. So for improving waste management, this primarily increases operational efficiency, which we measured in decreasing their other operating expenses category on their income statement. In improving automation and worker safety, we reached this calculation by calculating a decrease in yearly sales, general, and administrative expense. And for diversifying revenue, we calculated the improvement by increasing year-over-year sales growth by 1.5%, which is our target rate for diversifying revenue to sustainable sources.
Thank you.
You also dealt with the debt of Carnival, and I'm unclear. Did your analysis show that the current debt that Carnival has is floating rate debt? Is it adjusting as market rates go up? And then my second question would be, if that is true, then at what point did your analysis go so far as to show at what point the interest rate would have to go in order for Carnival to have to declare bankruptcy?
So we have not calculated at what interest rate that they would start to go into bankruptcy. However, we do know that S&P every year publishes the default rate that they expect with each bond rating and at each credit rating. And at Carnival's current credit rating, there's a 17% chance of bankruptcy. And in terms of their debt structure, 10% is in revolving credit, so variable on interest rate.
Judges, we have 1 minute and 40 seconds if you have time for one more question.
I was going to ask a question regarding your assumptions on increased travel to Alaska as a destination over the long term. There seems to be an assumption by the Denali Fund that that's going to increase. Can you go a little bit into that?
Yeah, so one reason that specifically with Alaska Airlines that we believe that it will bounce back strongly, if you could go to the appendix, page 35, about Alaska Airlines being less reliant on business travel. So business travel is expected to rebound a little bit more slowly compared to vacation and pleasure travel post-COVID. And because Alaska Airlines is less reliant on business travel versus leisure travel, it is going to have an advantage within that sphere in terms of post-COVID recovery.
Do you have a comment on actually Alaska being a destination, not the org, but people choosing to go to Alaska, the geography for vacations?
Yeah. So one of the findings that we found were So let me backtrack. When people were asked whether they wanted to accept credits for vacation travel versus refunds, they decided to take travel credit instead, which is an indicator that they will be willing to travel as opposed to just taking their money back post-COVID.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of our Q&A period. Thank you so much, Team C2.
Excellent. Thank you, Team C2. And for our viewing audience, at this point in time, we have seen all 4 of our finalists compete for winning the Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility. At this point in time, our judges will spend about 15 minutes making a decision as to the rankings of the teams that you have seen present today. During that 15-minute period of time, we will be showing a series of videos so that you can learn more about the Milgard School of Business, the UW Tacoma campus, and the Tacoma, Washington community. We are so sad we can't host you in Tacoma at UW Tacoma this year, but we hope that these videos will give you a bit of a flavor of who we are and where we are and get you excited to visit with us again in the future. We'll be back soon to announce the winners.
University of Washington Tacoma sits on 46 acres of the thriving museum district. From humble beginnings with only a few office floors, UW Tacoma has expanded into more than 20 buildings and continues to grow each year. We are an urban-serving university. This means our community partnerships help to shape our growth, allowing UW Tacoma to contribute in a way that is relevant to the community's needs and aspirations. Many of the buildings you'll be working in are renovated factories and warehouses that were served by the Northern Pacific Railway. The powerhouse, built in 1902, originally housed transformers that supplied electricity from the Snoqualmie Falls Power Company. It's now UW Tacoma's reading room and perhaps the most recognizable building on campus. Phillip Hall was once an open storage shed. It's now a flexible event space that can hold over 400 people. With over 500 events held annually, Phillip Hall is a source of vibrancy and vitality for our campus. The University Y Student Center provides an on-campus fitness facility and event space with offices for student organizations and programs. One of the best things about being downtown is that when it's time for lunch, there are a ton of places to grab a bite nearby. Campus is also surrounded by attractions like comedy clubs, bars, and museums, which offer free admission every third Thursday of the month. Welcome to the University of Washington, Tacoma.
The business school becomes important because it acts as the connection between students and the corporate community which supports us. And I think it's an extremely beautiful place to be in, because not only are you able to provide cutting-edge education to your students, but you're also able to provide the knowledge capital for corporations that are going to hire them.
Tacoma is so vibrant, and yet it's still a small community. And I really enjoy that. And being downtown has such a wonderful feel. And then the growth of the museums and the arts, and like I said, that student present downtown is just really invigorating.
I like the combination of advisors and instructors. The advisors, they're so interested in their students' progression, and the instructors, they bring so much real-world experience into the classroom setting. And it gives students the opportunity to feel more comfortable to ask questions and feel like they actually are seen in a classroom.
So my most rewarding experience here at UW Tacoma has been the individuals I have met. They genuinely want me to succeed just as much as they want to do themselves. And I was really touched when I entered the first business case competition ever, and I saw that my family, friends, colleagues, and professors were there to root me on. And it definitely made me feel empowered.
It's really rewarding to watch a student discover their inner confidence and start to believe in their abilities. And they go through several internships and interviews, and they get to graduation, and then they're actually employed as a professional. It's great to see that full cycle.
I really love the close-knit community feel at UW Tacoma. That's probably one of my most favorite things about campus, is just seeing familiar faces. You don't feel like you're just in a big anonymous crowd, but you see people you know everywhere you go.
So you're not gonna feel like I'm different, or like everyone is different, and we're all like here for the same goal.
Welcome back. Our judges have deliberated and they've made their decision. But before we announce the winners of the Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility, we'd like to share a few thank yous. I'd like to begin by thanking our volunteer timekeepers, Michael Helzer, Ellen Hermanson, Stephen Hahn, and Maddie Emel. They kept us on track and they communicated clearly when students were running short on time. I'd like to also thank Anne-Marie Martin, the program manager for the Center for Leadership and Social Responsibility. There are a lot of details that go into making an event like this happen, and Anne-Marie's astute attention to detail and thoughtfulness about the student experience has made this an event that has been very easy to run and very enjoyable for everyone involved. I'd like to thank Shirok Sotogawan for his remarkable work in recruiting teams, recruiting judges, and making connections with universities across the world to ensure that we had great representation and that folks were able to represent their schools proudly. And lastly, I'd like to thank our judges. You've seen our judges today in the finals. Many of them, actually all of them, were also with us yesterday. They've taken 2 days of their lives to devote to listening to students, asking thoughtful questions, and providing helpful feedback as students embark on their careers. Our judges this year are Colette Taylor, retired Russell Investments, Christopher Algio, Umpqua Bank, Don King with Catalyst Activation, Lori Fort Harnick with Goodwill Industries, Ann Porter with Goodwill Industries, Mo Alibadi with South Tacoma Auto, Lonnie Parker with Charles Schwab, Terry Jones with US Bank, Shay Fatimi with Microsoft, Bill Gaines with Tacoma Public Utilities, Jeff Thalua with Goodwill Industries, and Amy White with Nordstrom. If we could just take one moment to do a round of applause for our judges and participants. Thank you very much. With that, we come to the moment you've all been waiting for, the announcement of our 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st place winners for the Milgard Invitational Case Competition on Social Responsibility. I'd like to hand it over to our judge, Mr. Don King, to make this announcement.
Thank you, Rachel. It's just my pleasure to be able to present these awards. And, you know, as a member of the business community here for a long time, and I know I can speak on behalf of the other judges, that we're just tremendously proud of the University of Washington, Tacoma, Shirok, the Center for Leadership and Social Responsibility. What an outstanding event. And just to pick up on something that Shirok spoke about, this has been wonderful, this online event. Just congratulations for being able to pull this off. We also hope that in the years ahead, we can entertain and host people on campus, which we're proud of. We're very proud of University of Washington, Tacoma here in this community. And so, gosh, you know, your presentations just speak to the importance of social responsibility as a global endeavor. And I think the quality and the content of your presentations just underscores that. And so, you know, as we got together as judges, it is really difficult. There was comments because all of you did just outstanding jobs in your presentations and your analysis. And we're just very excited and impressed to be part of your work and to be able to hear your wonderful work. And that goes for each and every team. And I just hope that you know that you're bringing credit and honor to your country, to your university, and to yourselves. So I want to congratulate each and every one of you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and announce the 4th place team. And that is known as A4. And in finishing in 4th place is the team from Georgetown University. In 3rd place, finishing in 3rd, and this was the team that was identified as C2, and that is the University of Minnesota. Congratulations to you. In second place, this is the team that was identified as D4, and they are Korea University. So want to give a big congratulations to our winner of this year's case competition, and that is the team from the University of Maryland.
Thank you so much, Don. We really appreciate your willingness to announce our winners. Thank you to all of our finalists for your participation. And a last thank you to our viewers today. We really appreciate you tuning into the live stream to see the work that our students have done and to hear our judges' questions. We leave you with this. Have a lovely weekend, and we hope to see you in person next year.